Welcome back to the YouTube channel, Rob Sandstrom Designs. Still trying to build this channel and get information out to people. So hopefully you like what you see, and if you do, would you please subscribe? I've been told I should be reminding people to do that right up front. Also, please like and comment if you like what you're seeing. Remember that as you go through this video. In this video, what I'm going to do is cover how I took a file that a friend of mine gave me for making Christmas tree plates and turn that around so that I could actually use that same file on my CNC. I also made a couple modifications to the file to better suit some of my tools, and I thought it might be interesting to some of you, especially people that are newer, to look at how you could take a file somebody gave you, make some changes to it, either minor or major, and apply your toolpaths to it. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started into this video, and I hope you'll learn a couple things. And if you do, please give me some love there with a like and give me a comment. And with that, we'll set right into it. We're going to cover the following things. I'm going to talk about the file that I imported from my friend. I'm going to show you how I made a couple changes based on my preferences of what I like to see in files, how I applied my toolpaths, and then I'll go through how I actually cut it with a couple tips. The video can tend to be a little long. I tend to be a little long-winded. I know that, but I like to get out some good instruction, and so I put in tips and tricks along the way. If, for some reason, you don't like the speed at which I talk, go ahead and hit that speed button on YouTube and speed it up. Hope you have a great day, and I hope this video gives you a couple ideas. What you see here is the file that my friend Joe sent me. It's got his toolpaths all highlighted. Let me turn those off to make it not as busy. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward file. All we've got is a star here that you're going to cut a pocket in, and then you've got the shape, outer shape of the Christmas tree, and the inner shape here, which is going to be bowls. So there's a couple changes that I want to make based on just my own style. I tend to not like really sharp edges because they can cut you, and they also have a tendency to tear out and chip when you're messing with them. And I notice this star is pretty close down here, so I'm going to give us a little more distance. And then there's a couple spots, like a sharp spot here and a sharp spot here, that I think will work better than round it off, and also a sharp spot right here, a sharp corner right here, a sharp corner right here, a sharp corner right here. These sharp corners, I want to turn those into more of a fillet type of corners so that my bit, which is round, will go in there and make a cleaner cut. So I'm going to make some modifications there, and then of course I'm going to have to use my own tools. First thing I need to do is make sure I have the right size material. My material was 9 5/8, 9 plus 5/8 equals 9.625 wide, and it was 21.25, 24.6 meters. So to turn that into inches, based on the controller that I looked at, 24.6 millimeters. So I put 24.6, and then I use the times I, because I want to turn it into inches, and hit equal, and so that is its actual inches. So I'm going to round that off to a nice even 0.97 inches, and in the end I'm going to come off the machine bed. For the material, I'm using maple in this case. Standard speed will be good. Material settings, Canadian maple will work. Hit OK. And because we're changing a file that Joe had, you see all of those recalculating. And that's okay. I really didn't need them to. I'm going to turn them all off. And I actually want to fit 2 Christmas trees in this material. It's teacher's gifts, and they don't need to be as big as what Joe made them here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and make the changes that I want to make. So the first thing I want to do is go around and take off some of these sharp edges. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to do that is by using the fillet tool. And if we use a radius of, let's say, 0.125, that should help us out. So I'm going to come in here wherever there's a sharp edge, like right here. And if I can put a radius on it, I will. Problem was I have this grouped. You can't put a radius on the group. You've got to ungroup it first. So we're going to come over here and ungroup that. Now let's see if we can put a radius on these things. A fillet, I mean. So I'm going to put a fillet here. I'm going to put it right over here. And I'm going to make those fillets just a little bit bigger because they're not doing much. Okay. Okay, so now I've got all of my sharp corners taken care of. The next thing I need to do is address the spacing issue here. So I'm going to just barely take and move this star up just a little. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to rotate it just a bit. I think what I'll do is I'll just make it just a tad smaller. This by using the resize tool. And instead of going with inches, I'm making sure XY is linked. I'm going to go to percent, and I'm going to make that, let's say, 90%. Okay, that's just a little smaller. That's good. And now what I'll do is I'll take and I'll move the star up just a tad. And now you see I'm further away from this edge. And so the chance of me blowing out and chipping out on this edge has been reduced. The trick. So the first thing I'm going to do is, since I don't need any of this, I'm going to delete that top one. And so then this one is going to be the bottom tree. I'm going to move that to layer bottom. And then I'm going to select the top tree here, and I'm going to go ahead and flip this. So I'm going to use the Transform Objects tool. Let me group this first, Control G, and then I'm going to, or just G, and I'm going to flip this tree over vertically across the job center, and I'm going to create a mirrored copy. So hit flip vertical. And I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch compression bit on the ends here. So what I need to do is make sure that I have at least a 1/4 inch between these two, and it's clear that I do. Let's take a quick measurement. So that's 0.53 inches. You can see X distance there, or 0.816 inches if I just go from the distance. So that's fine. And then I'm going to come over here and measure, because this is up against wooden fence and I want at least a 1/4 inch there. I have it. Alright, so now we have both of our trees laid out on the wood. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change this one here to star. I'm going to add another new layer that's going to talk about dish. And then this layer, instead of bottom, I'm going to call that profile. And you'll see all of that in a minute. So I'm going to take this ungroup it, hit U for ungroup. Let's see this one. Ungroup it, hit U for ungroup. And the first thing I'm going to do is because it's easy to do, I'm going to take and I'm going to hold the Shift key and I'm going to grab the outer profiles on each of these and I'm going to move those to the layer profile. They were already there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to grab this one and I want to move these, you guessed it, to the layer star. And then I want to grab all of these inner dish areas and I'm going to move those to dish. So now I have my different layers all set up, and I like to go ahead and color them. So I'm going to leave the profile black, the star I'm going to make red, and the dish I'm going to make blue. That way I can tell those are different layers that I'll be cutting. Here's the tool paths that Joe originally set out. The first one you see, let's open it up, was going to be he was using a 1/16 inch bit here to do a pocket cut of the star. The next one he did was the dishes themselves, as you can see right here, and he was using a 1/2 inch up down cut end mill, which was a compression bit, and a 3/4 inch diameter bowl bit, 1/4 inch radius. I'm going to use a different bowl bit and a different combination, so this is what he had. And then his last bit, his last tool path was to cut through, and he went all the way through plus 0.005 inches. And you do that to make sure that you have a nice clean cut, and you'll see he had tabs that he edited. So let's go through and modify these tool paths or change them. So the first tool path, instead of doing a regular pocket tool path, which is what Joe had done, as you can see he's got this star here, it's a pocket tool path. I'm going to delete that, and I prefer to do, not the right or wrong, it's just this is what I prefer to do. I prefer on the stars to do a V-cut or a vCarve tool path. And so I'm going to go down, let's say about 0.125 inches, it would be plenty deep. And I'm going to use, let's try a 30-degree V-bit. Insert. And I'll use a clearance tool of 1/8 of an inch. Well, let's see if I need it. 1/8 of an inch. Let's go measure how big these stars are. Those stars are about 0.5 inch. Yeah, so I'm going to use a clearance tool of 1/8 of an inch, and I'm using a down cut because it's going to go in a pocket method, and I prefer to avoid any kind of tear out, but I wouldn't have it. I can use a down cut or an up cut. And this is going to be the star, and this is why I did the layers. Now I'm going to select close vectors, associate toolpath, and I'm going to select the star, close, and I'm going to calculate. So now I have the stars, and I'm going to move that up to the top so I know that's what I want to cut first. Now the next tool path that was on this file that I received was a pocket tool path, and indeed that's what I want to do. And what I want to do is I'm going to select close vectors, associate with all of the dishes, the dish profiles. And now you can see these are all highlighted. I want to choose different tools. So I know that mine is 0.97 inches deep. That's how deep my that's how thick my wood is. So what I want to do is I want to take the thickness of my wood minus at least, let's say, 0.25 inches. I'd like to have at least 0.25 inches on the bottom, but I'll make it 0.3 inches. We'll see what that looks like. Yeah, minus 0.3 equals, so my depth is going to be 0.67 inches. And that'll give me at least 0.3 inches thickness on the bottom of the bowl. I probably don't even need that much. 0.25 or 0.125 would probably work. These are little decorative bowls. We don't need to have them that deep. Let me go to make this 0.7. Just talk myself into that. Alright, and I'm going to get rid of these. And instead what I'm going to select and see if I can get away with it is one of my bowl bits. And I have two different bowl bits here that I've purchased before. One's a 7/16 inch radius and one's a 3/4 inch radius. I think the 7/16 inch radius will work best for this job. The pass depth is 0.3125 with this tool. That's pretty aggressive. I think I may want to go to a pass depth of, it can handle it, I'm sure, but I'm going to go 0.25 just to be less aggressive. And instead of 140 inches, I'm going to make that 100 inches. And my plunge rate, I like half of that, so I'm going to make that 50 inches. And I'm going to hit OK. Now, if you notice, I didn't change all that when I selected it. If I did the edit feature. So if I go to select again, let's take a look. You'll see all the original values are still there. I did not change any of those. When you go to edit, you'll see for this one toolpath, we've changed the pass depth and the plunge rate and the feed rate. I typically like to go with a raster strategy with the grain of the wood, let's say 90 degrees. And I like a last profile path. And this is what I'll call dish. Hit calculate. And let me hit a preview on the star and the dish so far. So it looks like a pretty good, I don't see any problems. Everything is nice and clean in the bowls. Alright, and then the last toolpath that he had here was cutting the thing out. And I'm not going to use a 1/2 inch, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch compression bit. This bit here. Everything looks good, reasonable path rates, speed, I like all that. And I'm going to add some tabs. We can see that tabs have already been added, so I'm going to edit the tabs. And I'm going to put tabs on, go down here and select close vectors, associate with profile. Hit close. Now it's associated with profile. Now I need to edit the tabs. And I just like the tabs on the flat areas so that they're easier to clean up. I don't need them on these areas here. Certainly don't want it on that star. Just put one there at the bottom, click that off. And we'll put this one over here. And because it's kind of round, and then I'll take this one off and I'll put it over here. And I think that's going to be a nice area for the tabs. Oh, get this tab off here. Alright, that looks good. Hit close. I want a small ramp, and that ramp will be 0.5 inches. twice the diameter of the tool. My CHZ looks good, and up here I'm just going to go to Z, height, and I'm going to be measuring off the bed, so I'm pretty sure that's not going to dig into the bed since it's taking its measurement from the bed. Hit calculate. Alright, now let me go back, and I want to move this one. I should have renamed that one to cutout for my sakes. I'm going to move that down to the end because that's going to be the last cut I make. And I want to check one more here on the... I wanted to ramp the plunge moves, say 0.5 inches. Reset preview, and now what we're going to do is we're going to preview this thing. Okay, that looks pretty good, so we're ready to go give it a cut and see how it turns out. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to surface this to make sure it's nice and flat. I do that with most of my projects, and I'll start that at this time. So what I need to do first is make myself some reference lines. So I can tell when it's nice and flat. I'm using a big 2.5 inch surfacing bit that I got from Rip Precision Tools. They call it the Slab Monster. And we'll go through that process now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to zero it. Right there is good. Z0. Okay, now that I surface one side, I'm going to surface the other side. Wanting to lift here. I don't want it to lift. Okay, that's something. It's important to always check your clamps. And when I first checked them the first time, I didn't see it pushing up on the side here. Hopefully it wasn't. I know it's flat even if it's pushed up. So, but on this side, see, it's nice and solid. I'm going to go ahead and use some bolts to hold this down, some screws, and to surface it to make sure I don't hit those screws, I need to make sure I countersink them. So I'm putting a countersink below the surface. So the first bit I'm going to actually use is my dish cutting bit that I had on there, which was 7/16 of an inch in diameter. And I'll cut the dish. Then from there, I'll go to cut the star. And from that point on, I'll use a vBit for the star along with a 1/8 inch end mill for clearance. And then from there, I'll go and cut the outside profile. So the first thing I need to do is zero it. Remember, I need to zero off the bottom. The other thing I need to do is make sure that this bit will not bottom out on the collet. And I've done that before, but I'll show you how we do that. So come over here to the edge here. I'm going to lower this collet, and you can see that I don't know how well the camera will pick it up, but I am just now almost to the bottom, and I'm still clearing the collet. So, okay, so we'll put the dust shoe on and start to cut. All right, we're at the point where we're going to cut the dish. Putting on the dust shoe, I've zeroed the bit. It's going to get loud, remember, when I turn on the dust collector. That bowl bit really did a nice, clean job. I'm happy with how it goes. Just a little light sanding in there should take care of the bottom. I'll probably use a sanding mop. No big rough chatter marks in the sides. Just pretty darn clean. Pretty happy with how that bit turned out. So now it's time to do the star cut, and then we'll move on to the cutting the outer edge. All right, the next tool path to cut is the star. And normally, when I'm using my V-bits in the past, some of you have been watching my videos, I always cut my V-bit first, but I've had a couple problems with some of the tips breaking lately, and I've talked to the manufacturer of these bits at RIP Precision Tools, and he requested that I actually use a clearing tool path first and then check to see if the performance is any different. And it should be gentler on the fragile tips of these very sharp V-bits. So I've gone ahead and I'm going to test for a little while doing the clearance path first and see if that makes a difference in my cut and whether I can do it that way, and if indeed it does prolong the life of these V-bits. So if you've watched my previous videos and you know I normally cut my V-bit first, and you notice that I'm not, that's why. I'm trying something new. All right, now we're going to go ahead and change over to the V-bit. All right, there's a few fuzzies in there, but I'm going to run that again because that'll clean up the fuzzies if you understand that language. If not, put a comment in there and I'll explain it. The next tool path is cutting the bit out, so I'm going to put in 1/4 inch end mill down cut, and you don't need to see me changing it out, so I'll go ahead and change it out. Remember, we're zeroing off the bed. That should give us the least chance of any spoiler damage since we're cutting through. I'm pretty happy with how those bits cut. You can see they're a nice, clean cut. There's not really many tool marks, some light sanding. I'll see what the chatter marks look on the outside here since I haven't got it off. But so far, I'm really happy with how the upper part of this dish really looks. So now I'll disconnect it, cut the tabs, and we'll see what we have to do to clean up the tabs on the outside. I decided not to torture you with all the finishing and sanding. Maybe I'll put the sanding technique in a different video at a different time, but I was pretty happy with how they turned out. What do you think? Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you picked up a thing or two. There were a couple key points that I wanted to point out in there. One was try to round out sharp edges in your tool paths. Try to make them smooth. The importance of knowing the length of your shaft for your bowl bits, if you're using a bowl bit or another bit that has a special tip on it. make sure that the collet will not actually hit the material, either as it runs to the side of the material or as it goes down, the collet doesn't bottom out and create problems. Don't ask me how I know. Been there, done that. In any event, I hope you enjoyed what you saw. I hope you picked up a couple tips. Until we meet again, I hope your life is good. Hope you're enjoying some time in the shop. And if you would like to see a video on the sanding process I used for these dishes, please let me know. Have a great day. Again, please subscribe to the show and give me a like or comment and share what you got.